7 News on your side at 4 starts now. The Presidential Oath of Office.
So help me God.
A tradition rooted in democracy. A new chapter begins. This is 7 News special coverage of the presidential inauguration.
Thank you so much for joining us for 7 News special coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump as the country's 47th president. You are looking live inside Capital One Arena, where an indoor parade will take place. Good evening. I'm Michelle Marsh.
And I'm Scott Thuman. The weather, as we all know now, drastically changing the look of today's events. Instead of outside at the U.S. Capitol, President Trump was sworn in inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
the
Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
After being sworn in, President Trump promised there will be several changes made, saying the country has been in decline over the past 4 years.
We must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America.
Now, already President Trump has signed some executive orders into place, and this includes measures to address immigration, the economy, and gender identity policies across the country. We're going to have a lot more on that coming up in just a bit.
We have a lot to get to this evening. 7 News has live team coverage throughout the next 2.5 hours.
We're going to begin with 7 News' Brad Bell, who's inside Capital One Arena, where a very unconventional parade, you corrected us, not really a parade so much, but at least that's what it was called initially, that's about to take place.
Yeah, you know, we were wondering if they were going to parade the bands through and, you know, cycle through and that sort of thing. But no, that hasn't happened. You know, there was some playing of the Army Band a little bit earlier. But since then, there was a speakers program. And now it's just a lot of waiting around for the arrival of the president. So, look, this place has been packed. There were many, many thousands of people, many more than could fit in the arena outside waiting to get in. And it is now packed to the gills, a full house. And I would say, you know, the highlight of the day was certainly 4 hours ago for the crowd here when the president was sworn in. It played on the big screen, and, you know, people were just beyond overjoyed to see that happen. And then it's been a lot of waiting. There was a speakers program. The highlight of the speakers, I would say, was Elon Musk, who came out and was extremely animated on stage, got the crowd fired up. This is what he had to say.
It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured. Thanks to you. We're going to have safe cities, finally, safe cities. Secure borders, sensible spending, basic stuff. And we're going to take Doge to Mars.
Yeah, a huge crowd. So what happens next? Well, the stage is set. Everyone here is waiting for the arrival of the vice president and the president. We expect to hear another speech from the president today, and then he is going to slide over to the other side of the stage, sit down at a little desk that's set up, and he is going to sign some of those executive orders right here in front of this crowd. These people have been in line since 4 a.m., many of them to get in here. They have now been waiting inside since 8 a.m., a long day. They're still smiling. I have not heard a single complaint. Everyone's still waiting to see, to them, the star of the show. Capital Arena, Brad Bell, 7 News.
Yeah, nothing to complain about because they're inside. They're the lucky ones. Brad, thank you. And a lot of Trump supporters, they traveled to the district hoping to be part of history. Yeah, but those plans obviously were shaken up when the swearing in and the parade were moved indoors. 7 News reporter Rebecca Turco is live outside Capital One Arena tonight. And Rebecca, I'm sure some people have to be disappointed, but I know you also found many who were excited.
Yeah, you know, it's really a little bit of both. We actually wrapped up a couple of minutes ago speaking with a family who's traveling from Miami that they were able to go to the rally yesterday. They were excited. They still had tickets for that, but their tickets for the inauguration didn't go through since only 20,000 people could go out there. But right now, there's still a lot of people coming in and out. We're about a block from Capital One Arena. Over here was lined with people earlier. Now we can see it's just a lot of their stuff at this point. This is stuff that they weren't allowed to bring into the arena. We're told both from the rally last night and, of course, with today's festivities, we can see the cleanup is starting to begin. So it's at this point, if you didn't get your stuff yet, someone else may get it, or it may be going in the trash at this point. But people really traveled from all over. We're talking beyond overseas even. We caught up with people from Venezuela and even as far away as Australia. Take a listen. So you didn't vote in the election.
No.
You to come out
We
here?
just love Trump. I love Trump. I think he's a great leader. I think he's going to do a lot of good things for the world. You can sort of feel the change happening now already, so I'm very excited for the next 4 years.
So lots of people out here, lots of excitement going on. Yes, disappointment for the folks who traveled all this way, but a lot of people we caught up with, they've been trying to make the most of it. They've been going to bars and restaurants in the area, and they were able to watch the ceremony from there. Back to you guys.
Is there entertainment yet? Or they just started?
All right, Rebecca, thank you very much. You know, we've been broadcasting live inside the Canadian Embassy all day long. We always love to work with our neighbors to the north, and we want to bring in now, fortunate to have with us the ambassador of Canada to the United States, Ambassador Hillman. Thank you for joining us today. I want to begin by talking about something you had mentioned in the past. You had said Canada will be ready for whatever comes our way. You were talking about this ever-evolving relationship between Canada and the United States because there are some question marks about what this new term, this new administration under a return of President Trump will mean. When you say you're going to be ready for whatever comes our way, what does that mean?
It means that Canada is very fortunate and feels very fortunate to have the U.S. as a neighbor, but we also firmly believe you're very fortunate to have us as a neighbor. And there's a lot of things that we can do together, a lot of things that will really help advance President Trump's agenda on energy and security in the Arctic and fighting crime and fighting drugs. And so we're eager to get to that kind of a conversation where, you know, there's been a bit of back and forth in the lead up to today that has been more about tariffs and things like that that we don't think are good for Americans or Canadians. So we'll see where that conversation goes, but we'll be ready for whatever comes.
That is the big concern. We're talking about potential, some have said, of a 25% tariff. What kind of impact could that mean on the relationship between our two countries if imposed?
Well, it would be very severe. You know, we are your largest customer. We buy more from the United States than China, Japan, France, and the UK combined. You have a big trade surplus in manufactured goods with us, and those manufacturers, those people who make those products, would have, you know, a knock to their biggest market. So it would be bad for Americans. Obviously, it would be bad for Canadians too. So we're just trying to, and today we're cautiously optimistic because the president has come in and said we're going to study this for a while, and we're eager to do that with them.
Well, and there's a desire to avoid a potential tit for tat between the two countries when it comes to almost retaliatory tariffs and spending that we get passed on to consumers, right? What about under this president, as we watch him review the U.S. military? This is a tradition that goes on every inauguration before he'll depart the Capitol. You know, the president has made some comments, whether they were slightly in jest or not, about making Canada the 51st state. I know that in a news conference a long time ago during President Trump's first administration, I asked Prime Minister Trudeau how he expected the relationship with this very different than President Obama, President Trump, was going to work out. You've seen him before. He's been president before for 4 years, but this may be a little bit different. Do you have any sort of trepidation, or do you feel quite confident that the relationship is already built on some sort of solid ground?
Well, I'm confident. I presented my credentials to President Trump. I've been here for quite a while, and I've seen our two governments interact well. At the federal level, the cabinet, ministers having good relationships with each other, but also across our countries. We have, many regions of this country that have ties into the U.S. that are regional. You know, we have different parts of our country that are very invested in Nevada and Arizona and South Carolina. And so there's a lot that goes on outside of Washington, D.C. as well. And again, that's a big strength in our relationship.
What do you think of that 51st state comment?
You know what I think? I think that I understand why Americans would be really interested in bringing Canada into the fold, but I think we're better, you know, as cousins.
Cousins. All right. I love the analogy. And look, you've said we'll always work it out. And I'm sure there's a lot of confidence on both sides that'll be the case, even if there may be a bump along the way. We'll wait and see how that plays out. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for hosting us here at the Canadian
It's a pleasure to have you here, and please come back anytime.
Plan to. Thank you very much. All right. For weeks now, Donald Trump has been saying that there would be some drastic changes on his first day that he takes office. And our John Rogers is over at the alert desk tonight. He's tracking several of those executive orders that the president plans to sign. John?
Yeah, now President Trump not wasting any time, issuing a number of top priority executive orders. Many are focused on immigration policy, including ending asylum access, deploying troops to the southern border, resuming the Remain in Mexico policy, also restarting border wall construction, also ending birthright citizenship. That's another key thing he's been talking about. That part is likely to face some legal challenges, though. Trump also plans to suspend refugee settlement for 4 months, and that program permits hundreds of thousands of people each year who are fleeing war and persecution abroad. Today, Trump said he intends to declare a national emergency on the southern border.
All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
Now, all across social media, I've been seeing this images from across the border in Mexico of migrants crying because just after Trump was sworn in, they lost their appointments to meet with customs agents. Literally, the app CBP1 shut down, and they were not able to have their appointments. They had just missed the deadline, so seeing a lot of emotional people on the border today.
All right, John Rogers in studio for us. Thank you, John. As for Joe Biden's final day as president, he greeted President Trump and First Lady Melania this morning at the White House before the swearing-in ceremony by saying, "Welcome home."
Yeah, and then this afternoon, Mr. Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, boarded a government plane en route to California. Before he took off, Biden urged his supporters, those who've been with him for so long, not to lose hope.
We never, never, never give up. Never. We're leaving office, but we're not leaving the fight.
Former President Biden is now in California spending some time with a friend there. Minutes before leaving his presidency, Biden pulled a surprise move and pardoned his siblings and their spouses as well, saying his family had been subject to attacks and threats motivated by a desire to hurt him.
Yeah, very last-minute move here, and there were several notable names also given a last-second pardon. Our John Rogers will have those developments coming up. Okay, going on right now, the presidential parade, as it's called, although as Brad Bell pointed out, not so much a parade as kind of a show here inside Capital One Arena. Our 7 News special coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump continues.
I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country. Sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
A live look right now inside the Capitol, where the traditional military greeting and review is taking place. This is the first honors ceremony. Normally, this is part of the parade that happens outside the Capitol before the president goes to the White House, but of course, they've had to make some changes. Let's listen into the band.
Sir, this includes first honors.
Yep. Okay, so now we want to, as we watch the Pass in Review wrap up, we're going to bring in Dave Lucas, and as we do, Michelle and I were discussing, it's remarkable how well they moved everything indoors, considering this typically would be a procession right down Pennsylvania Avenue or behind the Capitol there, and one of the people working with here, our photographer Matt, was saying it almost had a Broadway quality to it, watching the choreography there inside the Capitol Visitor Center.
Yeah, the acoustics weren't too bad. It sounded really good to me, and I just checked the temperature. It's about 23 degrees with a wind chill that makes it feel like the teens. So you understand why all of these events had to be shifted inside with so many people who would be on their feet outside enduring these dangerous temperatures. Let's bring in now our Dave Lucas, a familiar face. Great to have you back with us for our special coverage, Dave.
From the old guard to the old anchor. Yeah, I'm fine with that. No, thank you very much. I take your point completely. I'm struck by the stagecraft of this. Donald Trump has, you know, something of a showbiz background, and this had to me, a very sort of showbiz look to it. You had the old guard, the 3rd Infantry Regiment there, the Fife and Drum Corps. We see them every day around here. They, of course, guard the Tomb of the Unknowns over at Arlington, but they're in just about every sort of official military event that we have. You see them right there in the red coats and the tri-corner hat. It made perfect sense to do this. And frankly, the stagecraft of it, the camera shots, the lighting, the whole thing was very impressive, and maybe a lot more impressive and a lot more meaningful than if it had been something that they did outside on a cold day when people had been standing around for a while and were just, you know, stamping on the ground to try and get feeling back in their feet. I think this, as it turns out, was a very effective way of doing things. And we've been talking this afternoon earlier to security expert Bill Evanina, who has run one of these things before, and to hear how quickly they had to put this together, because they don't plan for this. It's somewhere way deep in a list of possibilities that you have to do. But when they decided a week ago they were moving this thing indoors, all of a sudden all of this had to get put together, and the timeline had to then be established. And you have the Joint Chiefs of Staff in there when the President troops the colors. And now they're moving outside, as you can see. I'm struck by how that portion of it, anyway, was very effective. And again, they did it in almost no time getting it ready.
And like they're actually in the car. I can't tell.
Yeah, Dave, I think that, you know, there are so many things to try and digest as we watch in this split screen. We're seeing the President and First Lady get ready to get in the limousine, where they will then make their way down Pennsylvania Avenue. And again, this is something that typically you would see them get out and do a walk, but in these conditions, that's not going to be the case. Very few people lining Pennsylvania Avenue below us here. We can see a smattering of them, perhaps people who couldn't get into Capital One Arena, where they can only seat 20,000, and there are something of 220,000 tickets that were issued to watch the inauguration on the National Mall today.
Yeah, and it's quite the motorcade. We heard the hum of the motorcycles, and then we knew it was time to look over our shoulders, and sure enough, we see them forming right now as we look at these live pictures as the President and the First Lady get in the presidential limousine, a vehicle that is so unique. You know, it's called the presidential limousine, often by the media called the Beast. This is a piece of equipment that really has special, robust capabilities when it comes to security. Find it so interesting that even when the President travels overseas, if there's going to be a road aspect, the vehicle travels with them overseas. And there's also, by the way, a mechanic who travels with the Beast in case anything breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, look, security is obviously one of the driving forces of how today has been organized and choreographed. There's no arguing or denying that. We have to recall, it was not that long ago that two separate attempts on then Donald Trump's life, now President Trump, had been taken, and was shot through the ear while in Pennsylvania, something he referenced in his speech to supporters today after the inauguration, when he went instantly into the Capitol Visitor Center and talked to that overflow crowd who could not all fit in the Capitol Rotunda. So we have seen just a drastic escalation of the strategy for security as the President now gets into the limousine. And we've seen all day long both soldiers, police officers, rescue personnel, paramedics all line Pennsylvania Avenue. And I don't mean one every 30 or 40 feet. I mean one every 5 feet, all the way down the street, both sides of it. They cannot take any risks. I'm sure to some degree, we've spoken about this, they were probably grateful that there is not an outdoor inauguration, there is not an outdoor parade, because they could at least have it in what they might consider to be, at least by definition, a more controlled setting. They're used to having to screen people to get into Capital One Arena. They're used to even having high-profile events where that screening is more intensive. So in that respect, that has been a benefit to them.
And you can see the security on the ground, but also on the rooftops of a number of buildings that are in this area. So they have their eyes all over what you see in terms of actual people, but there's also unseen security as well. And again, we're awaiting the president to get inside of the presidential limousine. And that vehicle has those extra large windows. There it is. It's taking off now. And if they're lucky, hopefully they'll catch a glimpse through those large windows of the First Lady and the President as they make their way down Pennsylvania Avenue. And as Scott was mentioning, there are a number of people, obviously not the volume of people you would expect if this were actually a nice warm day, but there are a steady stream of people along the gates that are set up here with flags, with signs, hoping to catch a glimpse and show their support for the next president.
And the messaging today is one that will get a lot of analysis and a lot of scrutiny over the next week or so as they try to take and impart some sort of understanding as to what the president will focus on in his first few days or weeks here in office. Look, he said this was the golden age of America beginning right now, really trying to turn the page on the tone in the country, calling it Liberation Day, saying from this moment on, America's decline is over. And those words do matter. I mean, we heard it from, President Lincoln's initial words were that this speech was to bind up the nation's wounds. That was after the Civil War. You had Franklin Roosevelt saying we have nothing to fear but fear itself. John F. Kennedy with that famous phrase, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So did we get some sort of insight from President Trump that we will see payoff from when he actually gets to put some of these plans into place?
And we heard from also one of the iconic lines from Bill Clinton, there's nothing wrong with America that America can't fix. So a lot of those unifying themes, we did hear the president say he wants to be known as a unifier. He says that this is going to be a revolution. He was promising a revolution of common sense, and that America would start winning again, to use a phrase that he often said during his campaign. And there it is again, as you get a wider view of Pennsylvania Avenue, you can see that motorcade making its way. And this is the day that democracy really shines. This is what so many other nations around the world admire and strive for, the peaceful transfer of power, and that is not lost upon us as we watch that motorcade now past the Canadian Embassy, where we are broadcasting live this evening.
And remember, it was just a few short hours ago that President-elect Trump took this same motorcade in the opposite direction from the White House, where he'd been staying at the Blair House across the street, but then met up with President Biden and the First Lady, and the four of them had that traditional tea that they often have at the White House, and then made that trip together in the limousine, and what could be seen as awkward to say the least, or maybe there was a genuine moment there between them as they all realized this is what the voters wanted, this is what the result will be, and needed to be accepted. Either way, we are seeing the peaceful transfer of power, and that's something that had been of great concern over the past few years. In light of what had happened January 6th. And this is a much different scene today, clearly. President Trump now heading toward what will be the rally at Capital One Arena. In fact, by the way, that rally ended in some ways more than a half hour ago. All of the speakers were done. There were about 14 speeches given, ranging from Kash Patel to Peter Navarro and Elon Musk. But they finished up, and so we are behind schedule as always, but the president about to make his way to Capital One.
Dave, how do you see this moment playing out as we watch the motorcade make its way downtown?
This is the presidential inauguration nerd coming to you right this afternoon. I was looking right there to see the license plates on the Beast, because sometimes that is a clue too about what we're doing. It's a red license plate, which is not the official license plate, and what I'd wanted to see originally was it a DC license plate that said taxation without representation?
Taxation without
like
representation, yep.
It is none of those, interestingly enough, and again, you look for stuff, and that was sort of an outward and visible sign that I just saw there, and while we're sort of waiting for them to get to their destination, I real quickly wanted to check that out, and I can confidently report it's not the one that they made a big fuss over not too long ago when they released the official license plate.
And just like that, they are at Capital One Arena making their way inside the special entrance. Amazing how quickly you can get through D.C. when there's no traffic.
Yes, isn't
and
it?
you have the road all to yourself. Just like that, they're there.
And he's got that for 4 years.
Once he is... Right, exactly. That's the best ride in town. You know, this is not just about the flair and the excitement and celebration today. He is going to conduct some business. He's already done a little bit with the proclamation and signings that take place almost instantly after the inaugural address. But now, once in this rally here at Capital One Arena, he will also sign some executive orders. The desk is laid out for him to do some work there, and he's promised more than 100 in the first 24 hours or so. Some believe, Jason Miller, one of his biggest advisors, has said it could be up to 200. So we'll see what exactly he puts ink to paper on. But the president will be also kind of riding high on the dovetails of what took place in this exact arena, about 18 hours ago, when he had his victory rally, his pre-inauguration victory rally. Was inside Capital One Arena, and they packed it with people from all around the country who wanted to be part of this. A lot of people did not think that this day would come, as you talked about earlier today, after what we saw January 6th, after the guilty finding of a court for 34 counts, after 2 impeachments, after other investigations about documents, about personal accusations and allegations regarding sexual criminal accusations in the past. I mean, all of this would lead people to believe maybe he's not going to get back into the White House, and he defied them all. And you can see that today in not only his word, but in his tone. He has made it very clear that there was a referendum of some sort, a mandate, that now he is in charge again because the American people, he believes, want him to act on all of those promises he made during that campaign.
It is an improbable return to power, incredible political comeback, one that we haven't seen before. What I'm curious to see in just a few moments as he enters the Capital One Arena is which executive orders he's going to sign in front of that audience. Obviously, this is a crowd of his biggest supporters who have voted for him. It'll be interesting to see which ones he signs before them, because you know he's looking for a strong reaction, and he'll definitely get one regardless of what he signs there.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been waiting a long time. They're going to let him hear it. And by the way, I want to clarify some of those allegations I was talking about in the past. Those were civil cases that he faced in some. They were criminal regarding others, like the hush money case. All right, let's get to Brad Bell now. He's inside Cap One Arena, where people are just moments away now from finally seeing the man they've waited all day and night for.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that they're fully aware that that moment is about to arrive. It has gotten very quiet in here, but folks are sort of sitting back in their seats. They're looking at their phones. We are aware now that the motorcade has arrived at the building, and certainly when the president appears, there will be an absolutely deafening roar in here. Now, you were mentioning we don't know what executive orders are going to be signed as the Army Band strikes up again. We don't know executive orders are going to be signed. We didn't even know who the speakers were going to be, really, until just a short time before they got to speak. And so, maybe it adds to a little bit of the air of excitement in this place. But look, the moment everybody's been waiting for. They had the speakers, and some would say they endured some of the speakers. They were excited for some of the speakers, and certainly they were thrilled to see the swearing in, and it was a pretty good place to watch it. We've been talking about it. It is a little chilly in here. The Cap's ice, after all, is still down there, but it's a lot warmer than it is outside, and none of the people that I've been able to speak to here are complaining about it at all. I've used this phrase several times. The stage is set. There is a stage back here. On this side over here, you can see someone bending down. They're setting something up. That's where the little desk is, over on the left side, where they're going to sign the executive orders, and over on the other side is the podium. And, Dave Lucas was talking about the inauguration nerd. Well, I'm one of them as well. The presidential seal did not go up until the signing in happened. Now, traditionally, that was not put up on podiums until the president was actually appearing, but in this case, it has been up there since just right about noon. So, again, we've talked about this. It was supposed to be the parade. It's not a parade. The Army band is playing. I've mentioned that there's one university band, one high school band here, but we haven't really seen any sign of them for quite some time. It's been a very, very long event, but as we said, the moment everyone has been waiting for is now approaching. We don't know how long the president will speak, but sometimes he does go on for a little bit. So this was supposed to end somewhere around 3:30, and we are now approaching quarter till 5 o'clock. We are, as you said, a little behind schedule. So that's the scene here. I'll send it back into you now. This place is absolutely about to erupt.
Well, and I think that, and Brad, you can probably attest to this based on who you've spoken to out there today, but I think that this is, again, proof that whether, as we talked about earlier today, you are a fan of President Trump or not, there is enough of this country that believes that there needed to be a shift from whatever the country was going through over the past couple of years. And if you were looking at it strictly economically, or you were looking at it from a leadership standpoint, the people spoke in a way that it meant he won 7 swing states, something he proudly pointed out in some of his comments earlier today. And, you know, it took the Electoral College with a number that a lot of people did not predict he would hit.
No, you know, yeah, slightly more than half of America is fully invested in the return of President Trump. You know, why do people feel that way? You know, I was out talking to people in the neighborhood over the last the community in the last several days, I should say, people coming to Washington for the inauguration, and I said, you know, what is it? And people use the word woke. One woman said she was a retired Army colonel and she wanted to end the woke military. Gender identity, obviously, that's been a big issue for a lot of people, and that's why the president brought it up today and said that's going to be one of his executive orders. So there is a lot of passion. We saw it when he was first elected years ago. I went out on the road. I talked to people all around the region, and you could see the passion for Donald Trump. And, you know, it's unusual, right? And I've been covering politics a long time. He's got a grip on the people that are in this building right now.
All right, so we're watching now as we take a look at what's happening in that room behind you, Brad. We see some of the entertainment that we would have expected down Pennsylvania Avenue. And if you think back to a traditional parade, normally you would have bands and performers from all of the 50 states. So it's going to be interesting to watch this all together to see how they have choreographed this new plan, which involves indoor demonstrations for the work that they really practice for a long time to prepare these acts before the president. It's quite an honor to be invited, and once you're here, you really do want to soak in the moment. So for some of these groups, they've had to alter their performances, but it looks like they are making the best of the situation.
I'll be curious to see how tethered.
So far, these are just military.
These are just
military elements so far.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how tethered the president is to any sort of planned remarks, or if he's kind of letting himself loose at this point. Because if you saw the comments that he made during his inaugural address, very serious, very solemn, very to the script, and then as soon as he got into the Capitol Visitor Center, less than an hour or so later, and addressed the overflow crowd, he was off the cuff as much as we've seen in a while, where he was telling all sorts of kind of side stories and making jokes and maybe even some more grandiose proclamations as to what's going to happen next in this country. And now he's going to be in front of this kind of, you know, crowd that's ravenous for hearing more from him, and they want some of that red meat that he dished out on the campaign trail. They want to hear that in person now, and he thrives off of that typically. You know, I've spent you know, more than my fair share of time. I've interviewed the president maybe a handful of times, half dozen times, and spent some time with him at the White House, and seen how he can go from that stately kind of, I'm going to toe the line and do what's considered by standard practices to be presidential, to I'm not going to be tied to any sort of leash. I'm going to say what I feel. And that's what a lot of people wonder. Is that what a second Trump term is going to be? Is he going to be even less handcuffed by the traditions of Washington, D.C.? Will he let loose even more often? And then will he preside that way? Does that mean that he'll be issuing a lot more executive orders? Will he be calling out other world leaders even more so than in the past? or will he try to be more of the statesman? We'll have to watch and see.
Well, he won't have to worry about re-election, but many have said that, you know, this could be a more potent Donald Trump than what we saw in the first term. To discuss more about that, let's go to our Dave Lucas. Dave, what do you think about this discussion about which version of Donald Trump we're likely to see in this second term? Donald Trump 2.0, is that going to be more of his authentic self, of him just going off script? Or do you think he's learned so many lessons after the first go-round as president that he's going to try to be, dare I say, presidential?
I think that's the obvious way to describe it, and I think you've also framed it very nicely, too. And the answer is, I think we'll find out in probably fairly short order. I agree with both of your assertions here, is that this is the audience to which he will be speaking, and I'm thinking he's going to be preaching to the choir on something like this. These are his folks, and he does pretty well in those sorts of settings. He likes the big theatrical, lots of people in the stands, lots of cheering, lots of personal adulation, and we see them getting the presidential desk there at the by the Caps goal there that they'll eventually be signing those executive orders, and there'll be more than one slap shot in that, I think, if I can just torture this analogy a little bit longer. This is going to be where Donald Trump, I think, kind of says, okay, we've done all the formal stuff, now let's party, and this is the beginning of the party.
Yeah, Capital One Arena will never be the same after this, but I do think you're right. If there's ever an audience to let loose on, I mean, these are the people that, you know, traveled across the country, went through a lot of hoops to get there and be there, and they want to see the president in his truest form.
And got denied their opportunity to do it up on the Hill.
Yeah, I do just wonder, Dave, how emboldened the president is going to be. I mean, we talk about some of the things that he had mentioned. For those who did not watch the inaugural address, I'm just going to read to you just a couple of things that he talked about. But actually, you know what? We're going to take a quick break. We'll revisit that in just a moment. You're looking live at our special coverage inside Capital One Arena as President Trump is about to have his, let's say, his biggest victory rally in some ways to date. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We've got another live look right now inside Capital One Arena on your screen. That is where the presidential parade, as it's called, but not so much a parade as it really is morphing into a rally, is being held indoors. It is a packed house in there.
It certainly is, and we are awaiting the president to sit behind that desk that has been set at the center of the stage there, and we expect him to sign a number of executive orders. We don't know specifically which ones, but we do know that he has spoke about immigration being a top priority, also high on his agenda. Energy policy, he said he's going to do away with some of those restrictions on electric vehicles. And when it comes to immigration, he says that he's going to take action on that front immediately with mass deportations that could start possibly as soon as this week.
Yeah, a lot of the promises, these are just a few of the bullet points. But yes, when it came to immigration, additionally sending troops to the southern border and designating cartels as terrorist organizations. But also, as you pointed out, I mean, it goes with that theme that we heard so often on the campaign trail, that drill, baby, drill, where he wants to undo a lot of the protections that President Biden put into place on federal lands, preventing any sort of drilling for oil or gas there. He wants to restart the Keystone XL pipeline project. He wants to make sure that we become energy independent, although that's a kind of a complicated subject sometimes. But on a different subject, ending DEI initiatives, declaring only 2 genders as U.S. policy, male and female. So you would imagine that an event like this one we're about to see him appear at, he's going to probably give the crowd a lot of what they want to hear, and they like a lot of these items, including renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, as he continues to kind of try and expand America's footprint in other ways, especially if he's upset with a country.
Yeah, he also said that he wants a society in America that is colorblind and merit-based, a reference to the DEI policies that he wants to undo. Again, 7 News live team coverage of Donald Trump's inauguration continues here on air and on WJLA.com. We'll be right back.